Right, what are we doing?
Focaccia, no?
I learned how to make the focaccia at Richard Burtonette's about 15 years ago. I was working for Gordon. 6 ingredients, really easy to do. And I'm just going to go through the basic steps. Prep time takes about 3 hours. And actual manual labour takes about 15 minutes. You just need to give it time in steps to rise and bake in the oven. What we've got some salt, we've got some fresh yeast, 320 grams of water, and 520 grams of strong bread flour, extra olive oil, plus the fresh rosemary at the end. A tray or a container or a metal dish, anything you've got in the house. You see I've got this in the house, it's a little bit broken, I know. But we're gonna get started. So, a large metal bowl or a pudding bowl, anything you've got in the house. When you're making bread, you always mix your dry ingredients first. So get your flour in there. Again, strong bread flour. And then what I'm going to do is put my yeast in, fresh yeast. And we're just going to rub that together.
Why did you not put the salt in at the beginning?
Do you not know that already?
Ah, tell everyone else, no?
Yeah, you don't always, when you, if you're mixing fresh yeast, don't put the salt in at the start, because what the salt does is it effectively kills the yeast, draws out the moisture, and if you ever make bread and it's got hard, dry lumps in it, it's because you've added the salt too early and it's cooked the yeast. Is that correct?
Yeah, it kills the yeast, yeah, basically.
Okay, so what you want to do is rub this together so you've got nice, fine lumps of yeast in there. Get rid of all that, might take a couple of minutes. Hashtag Ask Nick and Scott.
See how focused you are on your work there.
Yeah, and if there's anything you want us to show you how to do, tips, tricks, or whatever you've got in the fridge, whatever you've got in the freezer. If you've got 5 ingredients in the cupboard and you don't know what to do, just drop us a message and we'll try and do some videos for you, whether it's here or somewhere else, depending on what's going on. And yeah, ask us whatever you need and we'll see what we can do.
Ask Nick and Scott.
Hashtag. Okay, so I've rubbed the yeast in. Now I'm going to add, I've got my 320 grams of water and my 50 grams of olive oil. I'm just going to mix them together. You also need a dough scraper for this. It's quite handy to have. It does involve a little bit of arm and exercise work, which is a good thing, I think. So I'll put my salt in there now. Again, to mix that in. Water and oil.
What oil are you using for that? Does it matter?
Well, I wouldn't use like a really high quality olive oil, a good olive oil, but
the flavour will come through of a decent olive oil, won't it?
Yeah, but you're going to bake it really high. So, I mean, you can finish it at the end with a nice quality olive oil when you take it out of the oven, and then you don't overheat it and kill it. But it's a decent quality, like a pomace. But I wouldn't use extra virgin. I'd finish it with extra virgin, but I wouldn't put it on. Okay, so now I need to get my hands a little bit dirty. If you haven't got a dough scraper, what I used to do in the house, if I don't have one, a pair of scissors and an ice cream lid, cut all the way around, and it should give you enough to, basically what you want to do is just to clean down the surface. Yeah, pair of scissors and an ice cream lid will give you the same sort of thing. And you just want to gently start working the dough together. I don't know if you can see that in there. And it looks a bit of a mess, but it will come together. Just start bringing it together, and the water's going to get absorbed into the flour, and then it'll stop being more like a paste and it'll start to come together like a dough and start to come away from the edges of the bowl, which is really what you want before you get your hands in there. Just make sure that all of the moisture's mixed in. You can see that's still very messy.
Just to point out as well, like the work surface that you're using. I mean, not everybody's got a stainless steel work surface at home, but you can't make bread on just any old work surface, can you?
No, you need something quite flat that you can really work it on. Marble kitchen countertops are usually pretty solid, so I'd say you'd be all right on one of those.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see in there, most of the flours come together with the water. It's pretty soft, it's a little bit sticky, but you just want to work it. This might take a few minutes. I always tend to think if you fear the dough, it tends to stick to your hands, so don't fear the dough.
Hashtag don't fear the dough.
Okay, and you might think that's going to be a sticky mess, but what happens is that the gluten is slowly absorbing the water. It takes quite a while. And And when the water is in there, it'll start coming together again.
I mean, sometimes when it feels really sticky, a lot of people would add flour. Like naturally, as a young chef, you'd think if it's wet, you just need to add more flour to it to dry it out a bit.
Yeah, well, I think that's where you really go wrong with it. I mean, try it a couple of times. You're never going to get it right first time. It takes a bit of practice and a bit of confidence in what you're doing. So there you have a nice dough. I mean, the scraper is really essential now. So what we're going to do is we're going to knead the dough, okay? And so down and stretch it,
flick
it over, and then pull your fingers away. And you'll see as you do this, start to push it forward. Always, every couple of turns, just pull it back in again so you're not getting any dry lumps of dough. The dough start to come together. What you're doing now is you're working the gluten and stretching it.
Well, so how long would you do that for?
Well, you want to do it until it starts springing back. And to be quite honest, you know, if you see it now, again, I've put no flour on this yet, and you can already see it starting to come together. You stretch the gluten and you stretch the gluten, so when the yeast rises, it can hold its own shape. You know, the bubbles stay inside and it doesn't just go flat like leaven bread, really. So you can see now it's really, there's a little bit of texture in there. It's a little bit flabby, but you want it to bounce back. You want it to spring back. That's when you know you've got the gluten stretched. So I'm going to give this a good few minutes now. It's a good bit of exercise. Again, don't be scared of what you're doing, because if you start going, it gets sticky and gets everywhere. Don't. It will come off your fingers and it will start springing off the board.
Don't fear the dough.
Yep. You can see now it's starting to have a bit of.
I'm like
wobble.
Itching to compare it to a pasta dough, and you know, I'm sure we're going to come to that at some point soon when we'll teach people how to make pasta dough. But there's similarities with the labour. They're like the work you have to do to knead the dough.
Yeah,
but
and you're still stretching the gluten in the pasta as well.
Yeah, that's the whole point, isn't it? You're stretching, you're working the gluten to make the dough nice and firm, so you get a firm finish.
So you can see it's starting to get springy, and when you're pushing it, it's springing back a little bit. It just needs a little bit more work. Still, I haven't used any flour, extra flour. Now what I'm going to do is I'll put that into a bowl for about an hour to let it prove up, and then we'll go on to the next stage. Okay, so the dough is pretty much ready to start proving. You can see now how soft it is, not sticky at all, and it springs back when you press it in. That means we've stretched the gluten, and now we want to do is let it relax. So just fold it into a nice ball, and then in a clean bowl, I'm going to put it in like that. A little bit of cling film. If you've got cling film, you haven't, just use a cloth. Cover that like that, and then leave that for at least an hour to double in size. Okay, so next stage with the focaccia. If you have a look in the bowl, you can see that the dough has probably at least doubled in size, maybe doubled and a half. If it's an hour and it still doesn't look double, just leave it. It takes as long as it takes. If it's in your house, put it in a warm place, maybe in the kitchen somewhere. Give it time to develop. You've got time. You don't need to rush this at all, okay? If it goes 3 times the size, it's not going to do any damage, so I wouldn't get too nervous. All you need now is like an old bowl or a stainless steel, what would you call this?
Earthenware?
Yeah, like
porcelain dish?
A big lasagna dish, something like that. We've got some more olive oil and a brush, and what I want is to stop it sticking, so be quite liberal with your olive oil. All the way across the bottom and then down the sides. So a little bit more. Yeah, I'm not being shy with this, quite a lot of oil. Take the cling film off. You can see now it's nice and wobbly. wobbly is not really a real term, but you can smell the yeast coming off that, nice and fresh. And what we just want to do is gently coax it into the bowl. You can see there, almost just pull it off and let it fall into the bowl itself. Okay, so you can see now how much air is in there now, how much it's, but you see that's in there. And then what I'm going to do is roll it over a little bit and get the oil on the top. Okay, it's quite a messy job this, you need to get your fingers dirty. And then what I'm going to do now is just press, not hard, not pushing it out to the sides, just press it down. And that, now you can start to see that looks like, starting to resemble a focaccia. You've got plenty of air in there. What we're going to do is wrap that, cover that in cling film again, and you'll leave that another 45 minutes to prove up. Then we'll put some, stick some rosemary in there and let it prove up a little bit more, and then we'll bake it. Okay, so the focaccia is on its second prove. It's been about 45 minutes. You can see it's risen up about 50%. We're not going to push it down very much. What I'm going to do is more olive oil and just drizzle it over a little bit more oil on there. Smell the fresh yeast, smells amazing. Love it. Plenty of fresh rosemary. So again, if you've got in the fridge, you haven't got any rosemary, if you've got some fresh thyme, you can use a little bit of thyme, whatever you want. You've got a blank canvas here, you want to have some little cherry tomatoes, chop them in half, press them inside. We're just going to be quite, rough with the rosemary here. It smells amazing. Right. So then we get our fingers messy again, a little bit more olive oil in there. And we just gently press.
Doesn't that push the air out when you do that?
If you do it gently, no. I mean, you're always going to lose a little bit of air, but I'm going to prove it up again. And that kind of just helps the flavours of the rosemary get into the bread a little bit more. I've got some salt, but I'll put that out just at the end before we stick it in the oven. So again.
One more prove.
Yeah, one more prove. 45 minutes, almost till it's touching the cling film. Salt on top, a little bit more olive oil, and straight in the oven. 225 at least minimum. And if you haven't got 225 in your oven, go up to maximum, whatever that is. Get it preheat for a good half an hour. Fan oven ideally. If not, put it on the bottom so it doesn't burn. But again, we'll go through that in a minute before we stick it in. So another 45 minutes and that should be ready to go. So we just got the focaccia out of the oven. Smells delicious. I'm going to leave it to cool for a few minutes and then I'll pop it out of the tray. Don't try and take it out when it's too hot because it's really soft. It'll just set a little bit. So that's taken about 3.5 hours start to finish. Okay, nice rosemary and olive oil focaccia.